So every time you play KO, she just doesn't do any damage for whatever reason. But don't worry, my friends, because Exterior, got you on how to play Vertical Story Weaver comp. In this video, we're going to be talking about the strongest items, strongest units, and strongest augments. Before we start, if you want to support me, I have a Patreon now, or if you want information like for example how to level at certain stages, you can check here for rerolling, tempoing, and loot streaking in different stages. Now back to the video. And then your main DPS unit is going to be Aurelia. Her best in slot item is for whatever reason having a Runaan's Hurricane. This item gives her a lot of damage and it makes you win early game, so you can transition to Aurelia later. And then her best item overall is having a red buff because for one, it gives her a lot of attack speed, and two, she basically anti-heals the whole board since her auto attacks hits the entire board. And then to amplify her damage, having a death plate is very good overall because this item allows her to do extra damage. And then for the best alternative items, it's mostly for death plate, so you can take out death plate for having an IE, Giant Slayer, or Guard Breaker. I would like to note for Guard Breaker is one of her highest win rate items because this item gives her bonus damage if you hit a shield, and a lot of units right now have shield, so therefore when she hits them with her auto attack, since it hits the whole board, she's gonna hit them regardless. It amplifies her damage even more. But essentially, you kind of want to aim for always having a red buff, and then Runaan's Hurricane is pretty decent, and then just whatever items you can fill in afterwards. If you cannot get a red buff on Aurelia, Umbrella Con can work okay, just for the anti-heal part, not the damage part. So if you want good damage, you need at least a Runaan's Hurricane, plus one of the other damage items. And then her best Ornn artifact item hands down is Collector. This item is very powerful in Aurelia, specifically for the execution part, because if other units does damage to them, and they're low enough, that one little tick of her auto attack executes them as well. And a Cypher Focus is very powerful in Aurelia overall, because it gives it more attack speed and more damage, and since she's gonna be hitting the backline a lot, the further the range, the more damage you do. And Trinity Force is just a good stat item overall, so you can't go wrong with this. And then if you do have this item, Gambler's Blade, this item is actually pretty decent for the attack speed part, but you don't need the AP. But this item is really good early game to tempo, so you can get free gold and the win streak going. For your main tank, it will be Galio, and his best in slot item hands down is Gargoyle's Stoneplate. This item is very powerful for Galio because the way how his ability works, he taunts everyone, so therefore when he taunts everyone, they all target him, and Gargoyle's Stoneplate gives you more armor magic resist for the more units that target you. So this item is actually very strong on Galio for that reason. And then because every unit is going to be targeting Galio, you need a healing item like Redemption. This item is actually very powerful on him because it heals the rest of the board and himself, and he also takes damage reduction from AoE stuff. And then just to top it off, because there's a lot of magic damage going on, having a declaw is pretty decent for that, so he can nullify all the AP damage. And also does give you some extra healing and some HP as well. For his best alternative items, a Crown Guard is pretty decent on him because if you need to get rid of the Rod and Chain Vest for early game, it's a good slam item, and then you just put on Galio later since this item gives him a shield and AP, and Galio is an AP unit, so therefore it scales his ability even more. And then a second to that, having a Protector's Vow is pretty decent as well. This item gives you more armor, magic resist, and a shield if he drops below 50% health, and if you just need the extra stats overall, having a Warmongs is not bad over Redemption or Declaw or something. And then for his best Ornn artifact, hands down is Eternal Winter, because he taunts everything, and everything's gonna hit him. He stuns everything with this item, because whoever hits this unit will get stunned after a certain amount of time. And then for the healing, having a Spirit is very good because it gives him a lot of health regen back, and it gives him pretty good amount of magic resist as well. And then a pretty decent Ornn artifact overall would be a Light Shield Crest for Galio, because after he dies, he gets the rest of the board armor magic resist, and it also increases his shielding even more too. And then you cannot never go wrong with Diamond Hands on a tank unit. This item is actually very powerful because it gives you a lot of AP, a lot of health, and if the unit drops below 50% health, they become invulnerable for 1.5 seconds, and it drops 1 gold. So this item is overloaded overall, so always pick up this item. And for the AP carry, is either Zoe or Zyra. I would prefer Zoe because she's actually a lot stronger right now. And then for her best in slot items is having a Spirit Sojourn, so she can keep casting over and over. And then Nashor's Tooth to get that attack speed going, so she can keep casting even faster. And then for an amplification item, having a Death Cap is pretty good for that, so you get extra damage on the board. And then the best alternative item is if you can't build a Spirit Sojourn, having Adaptive Helm is good for that to gain that extra mana. And if you don't need a Nashor's Tooth, you can go Static Shiv. It's pretty decent. It helps KO a lot because it also magic resist shreds for her if you don't have the armor and magic resist shred already on KO. And then Archangel Staff is good amplification item overall because it gives you mana start, and it also gives you a lot of AP over time. And then for Ornn artifacts, having a DFG is pretty decent since it will give you more AP on the board, and on top of that, having a Mana Zane is pretty good if you don't need the Spirit Sojourn, and Adaptive Helm, so it's pretty good mana item overall. And then if you do have a Gambler's Blade, you could throw it on the AP unit instead of Aurelia. If Aurelia already has full items, you can just throw it on the AP unit. And then since we're playing Story Weaver, you have a free KO, and her best in slot is having a green if you're playing her as a carry. If not, if you have an AP item start, then you go blue, or if you have an AD item start, then you go red. And then what determines if you want to play green is unless you have the KO augment, or if you have a Star Weaver emblem, because it makes you hit 7 faster, so KO can carry. And then the rest is just all blue, so she can just one-shot everything. And then for the best support items is having a Moonstone. This item stalls the board a lot, because it's actually pretty strong overall. It's good on any comp, in all honesty. Same with Aegis, good on any comp. And same with Radiant Virtue, is also good on any comp. But the thing about Radiant Virtue is you can substitute it with the Redemption on Galio. Alright, it's gonna get a little bit complicated, but stick with me for a little bit. For level 4, you just put in any Story Weaver units that you can fit. And then for whatever level 2 tanks you have, for example like Garen or Jax, you just throw the tank on them. And if you're playing for a KO carry, and what determines if you play it is unless you have her augment, or if you have an emblem already off rip, then green will be the way to go. And if you have an 80 item start, just throw it on Sivir. She'll be the Aurelia item holder, and you're good to go with this. Unless you have a level 2 bruiser, such as Koboko or Rek'Sai, then you put the tank items on them instead of Garen. And then if you don't have the carry stuff for KO, like the crest or the her augment, then you just put red or blue, depending on like who you have as a carry at the time, which is either Sivir or even having a Zyra carry at the moment. Either one works. Essentially, it's just whatever you have at the moment. And then when you hit level 5, just put in more frontline just to fill in the more bruisers, or having more wardens. Either one works. And then when you hit level 6, don't roll for this, but it's good to have at least a 5 Story Weaver so you can upgrade KO to do even more damage. So you just put another blue on her, and then the first one's whatever you have at the moment. So with whatever you have, you don't have to copy this exactly, it's just whatever your strongest board is at the moment. And then you play either your AP carry, which is Zoe, or Zyra too. If not, you do your AD carry on Sivir. And then when you hit level 7, just throwing some more frontline is pretty useful, unless you want to play for more damage. If you're playing for AD carry Sivir, for example, then you just throw in a trick shot so she can do extra damage. And then by the time you hit level 8, you kind of want to roll down to find every Story Weaver units possible. And then the units that's not Story Weaver would be having an Alawi in the board and Morgana to have that extra synergies going. Whoever you had as a tank item holder, just put it on Galio. And if you have Galio 2 when you roll down level 8, then that's good for you. But most of the time, it'll be a Galio 1. And you want to save up to hit level 9, but if you're bleeding out too much, then just play for a Kai'Sa carry instead with the Aurelia items. Unless you're lucky enough to hit an Aurelia, then you also have an upgrade on KO, which is also another blue, so she can start one-shotting everything. And then you just put whoever Sivir had items on her into Aurelia instead, because Aurelia is a better unit. But essentially, if you want to play this board, you have to have a level 3 KO to do anything, because if you don't have a level 3 KO, she's just not going to be strong enough to kill anything. And then by the time you hit level 9, then you just throw in Morgana. Unless you have a Story Weaver spat, you just throw it on Alawi, because most of the time you hit Alawi 2, and the higher level the units are, the stronger the KO is. So when you hit level 9, you want to upgrade everything to level 2. If you get level 3, that's great. But if you do have a spat, just take out Sivir and throw in either a Rakan or Wukong too. Like just whatever legendary you can put in. And the best augments you can take is Call to Adventure. This augment is actually very powerful for KO, because the more units you kill, the more AP KO gets. And then like I said earlier, if you have Soul Reaver Crest, it'll be a very good direction to play it, because you can easily hit level 3 KO this way. If you cannot find Aurelia, this actually works out really well. And then Jewel Lotus is very powerful on KO, because it also makes her ability crit as well. Even though she's not a playable unit, she's actually very good with this augment. And then Potable Force is very powerful for this board, since almost every or an artifact item is actually pretty powerful for this board. And then Harnesses will actually help either Aurelia or KO, because giving them Omni Vamp helps a lot in the long run. And you get like econ augments such as like Slamming or like money stuff, so you can hit level 9 quicker. And Inspiring Epitaph or like either like Gift from the Fallen is really good to power up your board even more. And that's it for my vertical Story Weaver comp guide. If you have any questions, or if you want me to cover a different comp, just let me know in the comment section down below. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Later.